This video will guide you through the basic setup process of a ZFS HA shared nothing cluster on Linux. By the end of this video, you will have configured an active cluster with non-shared storage, a clustered service sharing a ZFS pool, and a virtual host name by which clients are able to access the service. The first step, if you haven't already done so, is to download and install the RSF1 cluster software onto each cluster node. Download links and information on how to do this can be found in the description of this video or in the comments below. Another task you'll need to complete before we get going is to make sure that any firewalls in the cluster environment have the ports that are shown on screen now open before attempting configuration. Once all this is done, you can head over to the web app. To do so, type in your host name, followed by a colon, and the port number 8330. Once the web app loads, the first step is to create an admin user. To do so, click the Begin Setup button and proceed to enter your information. Once this is completed, you'll be redirected to the web app login, where you can log in using the credentials you've just created. Once logged in, you'll be taken to the dashboard. Before we continue, make sure the hosts file is configured correctly on both nodes. Host names cannot be directed to 127.0.0.1, and both nodes should be resolvable on both nodes. This reduces dependencies on external services, such as DNS. On screen is an example of a correctly configured host file for two example nodes, Node A and Node B. At this point, you are now ready to begin configuration. Click on Create Cluster on the left-hand side of the web app, and the web app will then proceed to scan for clusterable nodes. These are nodes that are running RSF1, but that are not yet part of a cluster. These nodes will then be presented on screen. Starting at the top of the web app, enter the cluster name and the description, and then select the type of cluster that's being created. A shared storage is where nodes share the same storage and disks are connected to all active nodes. However, in this video, we'll be setting up a shared nothing, so select Shared Nothing from the web app. A shared nothing cluster consists of two nodes, one active and one passive, each with their own locally accessible ZFS storage pool with the same name on non-shared storage. For each service in the cluster, one node is set to active and the other is set to passive. Active services can be run on either node. Data is replicated between nodes by a HA synchronization process from the active node to the passive node, where the active node is the one serving out the pool to clients. For a shared nothing cluster, an additional option to add a node manually is shown at the bottom of the page. This is because RSF1 will detect nodes on the local network, but for shared nothing clusters, the partner node could be on a separate or remote network. To add a custom node, enter the host name and the IP address in the sections provided, and then click Add Node. After this, if any of the selected nodes have not yet been licensed, a panel will appear at the bottom of the web app to obtain a 45-day, no restriction, free trial. Simply enter your email address in the provided field and accept the end user license agreement. This email address will only be used for licensing and will not be used for any kind of marketing purposes once any licenses have been obtained. If you've added a node manually, then you'll need to reach out to us to acquire a license. To do so, email us at support@highavailability.com. Once all nodes are selected and licensed, the next step is to test the SSH connection between nodes. A shared nothing cluster operates by creating incremental snapshots of datasets and then synchronizing them between cluster nodes over an SSH tunnel. The SSH tunnel needs to be passwordless, and therefore the two nodes need to be SSH bound. You can also use an alternative synchronization channel for this process. For further information on this advanced configuration, you can visit the High Availability Documentation Hub with a link provided to the specific section in the description of this video. Once the SSH connection has been successfully tested, you will be able to complete the cluster creation process, so click on Create Cluster. Once the pool has been created, click on Cluster Pools to head to the ZFS Pool screen, where you can create a new pool or manage any existing pools. For this example, we're going to create a new pool. so in the top right hand corner, click on Create Pool. On the following screen, enter the desired name for the pool, and then select the disk layout you want to use. The available disk layouts are JBOD, RAID Z2, and Mirror. For this example, we're going to select RAID Z2. Beneath this, you'll see all of the available disks that can be added to the pool. This is where you can select the disks and assign them to different roles. These roles are data, log, cache, and spare. For this example, we're going to assign 5 disks to data, then 1 disk to log, 1 disk to cache, and 1 disk to spare. Once you're happy with your disk and role allocations, click on Submit in the bottom right hand corner, and you will be redirected to the ZFS Pool screen. At this point, you now need to access the second node and repeat the pool creation process. To do so, navigate to the web app in a separate browser window using the second node's hostname and port 8330, and then log in using the same admin credentials we created earlier. This must be done on each individual node due to the storage not being shared. The name for the second pool must match the name for the first pool, and as best practice, all disk roles and disk capacities should match. This will avoid any future complications that could arise due to different pool configurations and capacities. Once this is completed, you will be able to see a clusterable ZFS pool on each node. At this point, we're done with the web app for the second node, so you can close this back down, as the rest of the process can be completed on either node. In the ZFS Pool screen, you then need to click on Actions for the clusterable pool, and click on Cluster this pool. On the following screen, you'll be able to select your preferred node. The preferred node is the node that you prefer the service to start on when both nodes are available. This is on a per pool basis. If you are clustering a pool which contains pre-existing data, then it is vital that the preferred node is set to be the node where this pre-existing data or pool resides. This is a critical step, as when the synchronization process begins, data is copied from the active node to the passive node, and any data on the passive node will be overwritten as part of the synchronization process. Next, we'll add a virtual hostname, so click on the Add button and then proceed to fill in the hostname details. The virtual hostname is the IP by which you access the pool, and the virtual hostname will fail over with the pool. This ensures client connection is maintained throughout failover. Additional virtual hostnames can be added in the settings later. Beneath this, you will see the Node Interfaces section. For nodes that have multiple network interfaces, use the drop-down menu to select which interface the virtual hostname should be assigned to. If you do change the node interfaces, make sure to confirm them. Finally, beneath this section, you have the GUIDs for each pool. These are shown as a reference, so you can confirm that you are clustering the correct pools. Once everything is confirmed on this screen, in the bottom left-hand corner, click on Create, and you'll then be redirected back to the pool screen. At this point, you'll see that the created pool will show as clustered. To see the status of the cluster, click on Dashboard on the left side panel, and you'll be taken to the dashboard, which shows the location of each service, as well as the respective pool states, and shows the failover modes on the right-hand side of the page. These failover modes are automatic or manual. Automatic mode means the service will automatically start on a node should the other node crash. If in manual, it will not. Manual mode is generally used when performing maintenance. You can also stop the pool on the active node or move the pool over to another clustered node in this menu. You can also manage the cluster further by heading to Settings on the left-hand side panel and then selecting Shared Nothing. On this screen, you can edit the frequency of snapshots taken by the active node and the frequency with which the passive node will check for new snapshots. By default, the active node will create a new snapshot every 15 minutes, while the passive node will check for new snapshots every 3 minutes. This process will be explained in further detail in a future video where we discuss managing a shared nothing cluster, but you can also find out more by heading to the High Availability Documentation Hub. A link to this specific section on managing a shared nothing cluster will be in the description of this video. By reaching this point, you've now completed the basic configuration of a ZFS HA shared nothing cluster on Linux. If you need any further assistance or information regarding this, you can find further links to the highavailability.com documentation hub in the description of this video or in the pinned comment below, where there are additional resources to help with the setup process. Thanks for watching. Please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for future content.